to Monster Men.
Hey, we have a great return guest today. This is somebody that we wanted to have back, I think 2 minutes after he was with us the first time a couple of years ago. He's an author. He's an investigator. He's the king of cryptids. I got the books right here. Two of my favorite cryptozoology books, The Lizard Man, right where I used to hang out, and The Beast of Boggy Creek. And he's currently... He has two awesome things going on. He's living the life. He has a book with Rue Morgue, which to me is the Bible for horror. Monstro Bizarro, which is an awesome name. That's out, and it covers all these different monsters and cryptids. And also a movie that Jack and I just watched, the Boggy Creek Monster, which, for those of you who follow along, it's part of the Small Town Monsters series. And it's a documentary down in Boggy Creek, down in Fouke, Arkansas. So welcome to the show again, Lyle.
Thanks for having me back.
Oh, it's great, man. Have you on every week if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this show often. It's one of those great ones that keeps replaying over and over in my head. So yeah, I was excited. I had some stuff coming up. I said, "Hey, man, we got to get back on here and talk monsters."
That's right.
Well,
and plus, you're a Creature from the Black Lagoon guy, so you are close to my heart.
That's right.
You beat me to it. So here's a couple of things. So we had you on. We did 2 episodes, basically. One about Lizard Man and one about Boggy Creek. We broke it off. Both did phenomenal for us. For me personally, doing the Monster Men show, you're one of my favorite stories to tell because every so often I'm flicking around TV and I'll see you on a documentary. And I'm like, hey, I know him. So... You're my 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon of the legitimate horror community. I love it, and it's always whatever show you're on is always really interesting. It's right up our wheelhouse. The other thing is you two are separated at birth because between your love of cryptids and urban legends and all this, and then the Creature of the Black Lagoon stuff, sometimes I feel like I'm the third wheel on a date when I'm with you two.
Right. Other than the different hats, it's sort of like looking in the mirror.
Exactly.
His room looks like mine. I mean, yeah, I feel the vibe.
The thing I got recently was my Creature from the Black Lagoon flask, which is never leave home without it.
Yes, I got to get that. Yeah, I just got a custom painted Creature from the Black Lagoon painting thing. It's on a board, but I can't show it to you. It's downstairs in my living room, which is also covered in monsters.
Hey, this summer was my crowning moment. I met Rico Browning for the first time ever, and such a sweet guy, really nice. And I bought everything everything at his table, but just give it to me, Rico.
Yeah, he's awesome. I've got his autograph. I met him. I met Julie Adams, and I did know Ben Chapman as well, and got all 3 of their autographs. So I cherish those pretty much at the top of my autograph list.
They're the top of them all. I don't have Ben's, but the other 2 they're in a frame. That's when they're special, when I put them in a frame.
Right, yes.
Well, let me just point a couple of things out for what we have in common. I see a Dracula bobblehead doll behind you. And
right.
If I'm not mistaken, I see the U.S. Postal Universal Monster stamps on your wall. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah, I've got a huge Universal Monsters collection. I can just sort of give you a virtual tour here.
I got to start displaying my stuff. That is important. You got a museum.
He does.
Yep.
If I did that in my room, they'd put me on hoarders.
Well,
look at all the Bigfoot thing.
Yeah, there's
this is the best.
cryptozoology. I mean, this room has it all. Yeah, I actually, my house it wasn't on Hoarders, thankfully, but it was on HGTV on a show called Home Strange Home. And they came in and my house itself is not strange. I mean, they had they would do ones that are like, this guy lives in a UFO or something. And my house is normal, but on the inside, that was the spin. Right. Here lives this cryptozoologist horror guy, and here's all this stuff. And it was pretty cool to just see it on TV,
that's awesome.
It's cool.
So, I mean, now you've been on TV, but now you're a producer, You're a movie star. Because it was funny when I was watching Boggy Creek Monster, I'm going, well, that voice sounds really familiar. And I was like, oh, it's Lyle Blackburn. And that movie, it just came out last month, correct?
Oh, actually, it came out Friday officially. It was
Friday.
released. So, uh, yeah, it came up quick. We did a premiere showing on Saturday in Fouke, Arkansas itself, and so the movie's, I mean, just literally hot off the presses. Um, people are just starting to watch it. I'm starting to get the feedback from it, and so yeah, it's just getting out there.
That's great. Now, why don't you tell folks about the movie? Because to me, it was like reading it was like The Beast of Boggy Creek come to life. It was your book in film.
Right, it very much was. Early on, a few years ago, I had met Seth Breedlove, who is the director and owner of the Small Town Monsters film company. And at the time, we had talked about our appreciation for small town monster stories, not unlike The Beast of Boggy Creek, Lizard Man, that sort of thing. And he was talking about maybe a book series, and then very quickly thereafter, he decided to go with the visual side of it and do the films. And so once I saw his films, I thought, man, this guy was really doing it well. And for the budgets, obviously for independent productions, they looked great. The witnesses told their stories. And so inevitably, it came time to do the third one, and he really felt he wanted to, do the Boggy Creek story. And there's some people that are getting on up in age, so it seemed timely to do that. So, of course, he came to me, and because I had basically done all the research, I mean, and I am close with the people in the town and the witnesses, and they brought me on as a co-producer, which I thought was cool. That had a cool ring, and so yeah, it basically ended up being, in a way, walking you through my research and showing you the town of Fouke on film, and I'm the narrator, and I also appear on camera, though I never talk to the camera. It's more just sort of a third-person thing, which I think worked really well. The approach Seth made on it works great, and you'll hear witnesses that had never spoken before. Some of these witnesses are some that I had come to know and felt that I was trustworthy enough and I'd done well with my book that they agreed to be on camera. So I was very excited about that, bringing some new stuff and just sort of continue the legend of Boggy Creek. The legend lives on, as I always say, and the film certainly brings that. And Seth and our other producer, Brandon Dalo, did a great job with it, and we've so far been getting great reviews.
Yeah, Seth Breedlove is making they're great documentaries. I mean, they look professional. They're not hokey, because when you start talking about Bigfoot and things like that, you get a lot of real cheap, there's a lot of cheap stuff out there. But there were parts of this that were actually, I thought if I was a little kid, I'd be terrified.
Yes.
Without ginning things up. It's just straight telling the story.
Yeah, that was the great thing about it, is you really don't have to do a lot. You just let the witnesses tell the story. You show the B-roll of the area where it happened. And some of these places we were able to show haven't been seen since the Legend of Boggy Creek movie in 1972. I mean, they're kind of famous, and I wrote about them in the book and have some photos, but here you see it on camera, and it just really takes you to the place. And when you hear these stories from these very credible, very upstanding, well-spoken people telling you that they saw a 7-foot-tall, hair-covered man-like creature in the woods, man, it's creepy for sure.
Absolutely.
A couple of things. Number one, I agree that I like the presentation, that it wasn't hokey, it wasn't trying too hard, it was really factual. Because guys like us, we've gone like ghost hunting or whatever, looking for local legends, and we always just go as a matter of fact, like, look, we're not carnies. We're not trying to fool anybody. We're just curious, like, what the heck's going on here. So you're right. It's presented by, here's witnesses. This is what they say. But the other thing I appreciated about the movie was the maps and seeing the real locations. But, we're in the New York City area. So sometimes when you, like, talk about locations, I'm not sure like how far that is from other things. So to see like, oh, okay, Texas is right there. Oh, okay, New Orleans is right there. Or where is this compared to like the whole thing about that part of the state being cut off by water was really interesting. So I totally appreciate like just one thing reading a book, and that's great. But then to be able to see the stuff and go, oh wow, I didn't realize it was that big, or in some cases like the creek itself being so tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great, thing. And I mean, somewhat of a cue from the Legend of Boggy Creek. He shows a map there, and we kind of echo that and show some more support on that. And yeah, to see Boggy Creek and have us say, for all its fame, this is it. This is Boggy Creek. And I think hopefully people who have the nostalgia for the movie and want to see more, and like my books and want to see the continuing story, it's great. And for, like you say, new kids who, their dad says, oh, watch this documentary. I mean, these people saw this thing, within the last couple of years, that new generation will also appreciate Boggy Creek that may not get the old movie. I mean, it's dated in some ways, but I think they can understand this and appreciate this very much.
Yeah, that's really true, because I know I have teenagers. You show them something that looks relatively old, and they're like, oh, especially if it's black and white or if it's not shot real pretty.
Mm-hmm.
This will definitely reintroduce a new generation of kids. And there's that one scene with Smokey Crabtree when he's narrating about the boy who had the sighting of it and shot the creature in the face. That the tension that was built up in that scene, and just the way he told that story, just so plain and matter of fact. That was the best part of the movie for me.
Yeah, it's great to have Smokey's own words. We were fortunate to have permission to use that. Smokey passed away in January of this year, so he's not wasn't here to put on film, but he was always a little suspect about film anyways, and I'm not sure he would have even done it, but he left some stories that he'd recorded, and we were able to use those, which obviously really helped. That was his son, Lynn, that had that encounter, and that's one of the sort of the pivotal encounters for the Fouke monster, and to hear it in Smokey's own words is amazing.
It was really chilling, and I like the way that they used the animation. Well, it's not really animation, but it's pictures, and just the way that story was told. I was just, I had goosebumps, believe it or not.
Right.
48 years old, and I had goosebumps watching an encounter with a Bigfoot. It was crazy.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. And I mean, as I watched it even at home when I was looking at the first rough cuts, and when I saw it there in Fouke, I honestly, I teared up a little bit hearing Smokey on there, and just the relevance of his contribution, and getting to know him, and him having just passed away in January, having been a pallbearer at his funeral, right. And then this short of time period later, just to hear his voice echoing in that big room where we showed the movie, and to tell that tale, man, it just got me very emotional.
Yeah, I could see that.
So, well, you're touching on another thing that I was impressed about you the first time that we talked, and as I was watching this, knowing you a little bit, I love your personal connection into this whole thing. The reason that he and I do Monster Men and all this is our love of things, and we always go back to the Night Stalker in 1972. Just changed our lives. There's a bunch of things. So when you hear like this story compelled you, and now seeing you make a movie about it, again, for people who love the genre stuff like this, like we do, you're inspirational, and you're more legit when you're talking about it, because like this guy loves this, he's dedicated to it, so you want to know the truth too, and so I love watching you talk, because I know you're passionate about it, and you've done your homework, and you're right, like everybody's getting older, the newer generation, this stuff's going to be harder and harder to find, so now you've done all this research, you've got them up to date now, and then you've got these stories, and there was somebody there that was like what was it, 2011?
Yes.
So there's like recent stories in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you're like, oh wow, this is still happening.
Yeah, I still get that question, which is funny because my book's been out for a while, and my About Monster website has a list of sighting logs, and but still, I think there is an impression that you know it isn't that current, but it certainly is. I mean, I was just up there and investigating a sighting from 3 weeks ago. That's the most recent, and they're sporadic and periodic, but it does go on, and to have these witnesses tell their stories that happened very recently is yeah, great, and just came off well in the film.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you always present things, you're an investigative reporter.
Right.
It's kind of, you're like Kolchak with a cooler hat and a really cool collection of stuff. And a guy like me who writes about cryptids, I depend on your sweat and toil and labor. So you do all the fact finding, and then I take everything from you and just twist it all around and make, crazy stories out of the legends that you're investigating seriously.
Right. Well, but in some ways I do the same. I've depended on Lorne Coleman and Smokey Crabtree himself, and just build on it and build on it to piece together the history, to bring it, to keep it up to date, and to add my own stuff in there, and then somebody like yourself that takes that stuff that's got all the stuff we love, and to take it and build another story from that stuff is just cool, because it just surrounds, if you're into that subject, it's just everywhere you can look, and it's cool. Anything to do with a cryptid, is awesome to me.
Oh yeah, and I love Lorne Coleman, and sometimes they'll say, what's the next thing I should do, and they'll say, oh, I remember when he told me to do something on the Dover Demon, and I said, all right. So he told me the story and how that was one that still confounds him. And about a week later, because I was up at his museum, and then he kind of wrote me his idea of what the story should be. It involved the military and tanks. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. But hey, I am going to write about the Dover.
Did you read that book you wrote? Yours was pretty out there myself.
Yes, but I didn't put tanks in it.
There was no tanks.
No tanks.
Okay.
So,
Saving.
Lyle, I'm curious, both in The Lizard Man and Boggy Creek, you interview a lot of interesting, incredible sources. Eyewitnesses, people who were there, family members, cops, or other authority figures. But what about the bullcrap detector? Have you come across people that you're just like, no way, this guy's full of it?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been numerous times when I'm approached by someone with outlandish claims or stories, and even early on I could detect that pretty well and just ignored it. Now the bullshit detector is quite efficient, and I can just eliminate that right off the bat. And then some that I hear of, and I continue to kind of probe into that, and just to double check. And sometimes I then find here comes a bunch of other claims which tend to diminish the original claim. So I really try to follow up and only use what is, in my opinion, the most credible information, because there's no lack of it. There's no reason to include, the nonsense at all, and it doesn't help anything to do that. So I always try to filter those out and include the best, and report the facts, of course. I mean, I'm somewhat of a investigative journalist, as you say, but reporting the facts, but not reporting, what I consider to be the best sources.
Right. Now, speaking of being a journalist, segue. See a nice segue here. Your new book. This is now Monstro Bizarro. Did this just come out recently? Is this a fall release for you?
Yeah, it was released in October. October 1st was the release date, but it really starts to get on newsstands, sometimes a week or two later. So it's been within the last month.
This is a stellar month for you. This is good. This is 2 home runs. Now, this is through Rue Morgue magazine, which to me, it's what Famous Monsters was as a kid to me growing up. This is taking its place. I especially like them because they review books. But I know I've seen this is part of a series that they do, and you can find them, on the magazine rack in the stores, but they're not like the regular Rue Morgue magazine itself. They're always dedicated to something specific, like the top. I think one of them was the top 100 horror movies of all time, or something like that. But this one is an essential manual of mysterious monsters. So, how did you get into writing that? Did you approach them? They come to you?
Yeah, I mean, it still trips me out that I write for Rue Morgue because I was such a fan of the magazine for so many years before I ever started writing. And they had featured my band Ghoultown in the magazine, and I had met them at several horror conventions, and some crazy way or another, I ended up convincing them that I could also write. I had talent there, and that's kind of what got me started on all this. So I've always had articles in the magazine. I have a monthly column called Monstro Bizarro, which it's a small thing, but it's always just about cryptozoology. So the publisher, the editor, all the guys up there and the girls, they love the cryptozoology subject. So it was perfect for me to bring it to the magazine because I sort of, in some ways, am a fan of horror movies, and I'm knowledgeable about that, but I'm also knowledgeable about the subject of real life cryptids. So when they started doing these, what they call the library series books, they're like supplement editions. Naturally it came up to the idea of doing one, just call it Monstro Bizarro and make it all about cryptids and horror. And naturally, I thought that was a great idea and something I've kind of been wanting to do. I just never had the right vehicle to do it. So this was a perfect thing, and it kind of expands my column, my Monstro Bizarro column from the magazine, and takes, by 1 million and turns into a whole book, things that I can't do in the magazine. So basically it covers everything from cryptids in horror films, but also in other culture, like horror toys and some books and documentaries and TV, all that kind of thing. And I was able to cover all that into one book. So it's really been a cool project.
I can't wait to see that. We're going to do a whole other show once we get our hands on this book, because this is the kind of stuff that our audience loves.
And I mean, it looks amazing. That's the thing, because if you've seen Rue Morgue, you know the aesthetics of the visual graphic layout of that magazine. Yeah. This is no less than that. I mean, it just blows me away when I look at the design. There's tons of photos and artwork all through it that just really, kicks it over the top, with the articles. So it just looks amazing.
Now, how many monsters do you think you put in there? You want to take a guess?
Well, I mean, it covers, in some ways, just kind of every major cryptid. I mean, I have an article on top 10 cryptids, and I go through what I consider the top 10, heavy hitters of cryptozoology. And then there's an article on, like, the top strangest cryptids. That covers a whole bunch more. Then there's an article on lake monsters, which kind of is a companion to an article on that show River Monsters, which is kind of a real life cryptozoology. And then articles on Mothman, Mongolian deathworm, Mochilium bimbe. It just, the whole gamut is in there. And then if you want to talk about appearances of Bigfoot in film, I've got an article called The Horror of Bigfoot, and it literally goes through the entire history of Bigfoot's presence in horror films, starting back in the 50s and going on up. So, it's just chock full of information. You probably, many people probably don't realize how many appearances Bigfoot has had in films and things like that. So it's just packed full of stuff.
Did you even include the one with Greg Brady?
It's got a mention. It's as short as I could possibly mention it. Yes.
There you go. That's a completist then. If you have that movie,
I try to be thorough and very complete, and of course some of them get more word time there than others as I kind of weave through the history. of it, you know, with a synopsis, and then some of them sort of get mentioned.
Right.
So yeah.
What do you think some of the top Bigfoot appearances in movies and TV are? Like, would Harry and the Hendersons be something?
Well, I mean that one in you know, I kind of kept it in terms of horror. So while I think it's a good movie and an excellent costume, and you know, very popular, not so much in the vein of horror. So in terms of that, obviously the Legend of Boggy Creek, you know, at the top, and I've got several articles on Boggy Creek unto itself. And then some of my other top ones would be Creature from Black Lake, Sasquatch, The Legend of Bigfoot is a good one. There's one called Paper Dolls, which is a very obscure film that I thought was well done and had a kind of a twist on the Bigfoot theme. In recent years, you've got Exists.
I love that.
Sanchez, who incidentally wrote the foreword for the book, so I was stoked about that.
Great.
Exists is good. Is really
yeah,
good.
great. You know, I thought Willow Creek was entertaining film and a different approach that Bobcat has done. But you know, he's a good filmmaker, and having it, you know, anytime these good filmmakers go and make any sort of thing connected with cryptids or Bigfoot is awesome, because a lot of these films are being made by not just indie people, but you know, amateur filmmakers, and you know, it's great, and that gives some. There's more movies, but it also kind of mucks up the waters when you're trying to navigate to the good ones. There's just so many of those ubiquitous Bigfoot goes on a rampage type thing, you know.
Bigfoot versus D.B. Cooper.
And then there's that. It just gets ridiculous. So, you know, which I can understand those crazy ones, but sometimes I just don't understand why, you know, Bigfoot's such a good subject, and sometimes it's keep going back to the same thing. Bigfoot War, for example, based on Eric Brown's book.
Yeah.
The books are great, super entertaining, just over the top, violent Bigfoots, you know, waging war. And then the movie just, I don't understand. It just went totally south.
Well, when they had a budget of $73.42, I guess they had to make concessions.
That's true, but I think if somebody can give me $73, I can do better. In fact, our Boggy Creek Monster film, while it's not a fictional horror film, was probably made for much less than that movie was made for. They probably spent more on their costumes than that. So
Yeah, probably.
but yeah, there's you know, worse than others. Shriek of the Mutilated, I think, is one of those crazy classics. Let's see, what Night of the Demon.
This is great. This book's going to be. I can't wait to read your book.
There's so many of them. I just starting to even think of them. There's a new one from Australia about the Yowie called Throwback, which was pretty good.
Oh, really?
Good visuals. It pretty well made. I like that one. And so this is, if anybody's into that kind of stuff, this is the manual for it, because I've done all the work. You know, some of it grueling to watch, some of these horrible movies, to bring you up, you know, the cutting edge news on what should be watched and what shouldn't. So
now, if you had to extract Bigfoot from the list, what would be your next favorite monster cryptid that fascinates you the most?
That's present in horror films, or just cryptid in general?
Just cryptid in general.
I mean, obviously, Lizard Man fascinates me quite a bit, and I think obviously it's that sort of modern creature from the Black Lagoon story, something that's walked out of a swamp in modern day. So, and it's just creepy as hell. Just this reptilian humanoid type thing, whether it's a cryptid or what kind of creature it may be, it's always fascinated me immensely. Just that swamp monster vibe.
Yeah. Although my kids swear that Hillary Clinton was a reptilian, so.
Well, then there's that. Yeah, that gets really scary stuff.
Is that like in V when they take their faces off?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of, but they're living in plain sight, and they control us along with the Illuminati out of Dulce Base, and you
So
can just
is
throw
it-
the whole kitchen sink in
Is
that.
it like Roddy Piper that I can only see it if I took some of it?
In some ways, yeah.
I'm all out of bubble gum.
See their eyes, and
Yeah.
it briefly flashes to that, snake-like eye.
Yeah,
Scary stuff. But yeah, and there's Mokele Mbembe is another one. For those that don't know the term, it's the sort of living dinosaur from the Congo, the Brontosaurus sauropod, if you will. Tales of this relic dinosaur living there in the swampy areas of the Congo. I mean, that's super cool. I mean, that's like, that's those old movies, it reflected like King Kong or something. You go to like going to Skull Island, but this
yeah.
fictional island. This is the Congo. So I've always loved, even the remote possibility that there was a relic dinosaur living anywhere in this world.
Right. People ask me all the time. They say, "Do you believe this stuff that you talk about and write about?" I said, "Look, I don't necessarily believe everything is actually real and happening, but I can only hope that all of it is." Every single one of them, I wish that they are actually out there and hiding somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's just, having that possibility that it's out there, and certainly hopeful. And I think a lot of people, even the most, level-headed cryptozoologists, they really do hope that these things do exist. And that doesn't mean it affects their thinking, but it just keeps the passion going. It's that sort of childlike wonder. And I talk about this in the intro to the Monstro Bizarro book. It's just sort of that childlike wonder. And, I loved horror movies ever since I was a kid, but they didn't scare me as much as the possibility that, I may encounter a 7-foot tall ape in the woods. That just freaked me right out.
Exactly.
That just drove my imagination. And so that's why I love these films, because there is some grain of reality to them. And it's sort of like in your books, it's, hey, this isn't totally made up. People have said they've seen these creatures,
This is why I don't go camping. That's a very good reason why.
Is Monstro Bizarro part of a series of books, like by other people?
There's this. It's the 7th one in the Rue Morgue library, and they've all been written by different writers at Rue Morgue. So, for example, there was one it was called Blood in Four Colors. It talks about the history of horror in comic books, and that was written by the guy who writes every month about the horror comics. Mm-hmm. So, he did a full book on that. And then there's been ones on Canadian horror written by different guys. Cryptid Collectibles, which was concentrated on all the horror toys and collectibles over the years. So each one is written by a different Rue Morgue writer or a group thereof. And even in mine, I have a few reprinted articles which were written by some of the other guys, and also some contributions by some of my cryptid hunting cohorts, Ken Gerhard, Nick Redfern, and David Weatherly. So it was a lot to put together the book. So I thought it would be cool to have some case files. So every once in a while you're reading about, Crater Lake Monster, some movie, and then there's a case file, which is literally eyewitness testimony for somebody from some research we've done for myself and Ken and Nick and David, which I thought was cool for those Rue Morgue readers that don't really read much cryptozoology, to really put something in there and say, this is some creepy stuff. One of them, I think David contributed, was a guy saw like a giant spider in South America that was almost as big as his Jeep. Ooh. And got up. Yeah, and it is creepy as any of the films in there. So.
Well, David Weatherly has those black-eyed children stuff that just totally freaks me out.
First of all, if I see a spider that's as big as a quarter, I'm like panicking. So if it's from the size of a car, I'm going to go get myself a rocket launcher.
Yeah, maybe exaggerating slightly, but not too much. I mean, this thing was huge, and I was kind of coming down this old dirt road at this guy, and he got in his Jeep, and it was chasing him, or on the Jeep,
Oh my god.
And so, yeah, some really creepy stuff in there.
That's awesome.
These books, or the Rue Morgue Library, I'm having visions of the Mysteries of the Unknown Time Life book series when we were kids, where you collect all different topics. Don't you have one?
Yeah, I do. I have. Oh, hold on.
This sounds like a great collection for the library, by your own personal library. There we go. Oh, that I cannot wait to get my hands on that, Lyle.
Yeah,
there it is, the UFO.
It's very much like that in the horror vein, except soft cover, not
right,
not hardcover. But yeah, I mean, it's they all have the same kind of look, the sizing, and I've got my awesome Monstro Bizarro logo.
Yeah, which I will admit that's the second thing I go to when I get my new issue of Rue Morgue. I go to the books to see what they've reviewed, hoping one of mine is in there. And then I go to Monstro Bizarro and get my cryptid fill for the month.
Cool. Well, I appreciate that. And
so they would get that at the Rue Morgue website, or can they get that on Amazon?
No, only through the Rue Morgue website, or in retail stores where Rue Morgue is sold, Barnes and Nobles, Books A Million, places like that. But a lot of it's found in the magazine section with the Rue Morgues, so they don't stock hundreds of them. So a lot of stores are going to be sold out on retail wise, but you can always order it from the Rue Morgue site along with the other titles. And they've had these supplements are just super awesome. I mean, I've got all of them. They're just some good.
They are. I've got a couple myself, and they're only $14.95. So
yeah,
great bargain. So we're going to let you go so you can go out and look for Bigfoot somewhere else. But before you go, where can people learn about you, go watch the movie, get Monstro Bizarro? What are the best places for them to go?
Well, you can certainly use my website as a springboard for those things, and that would be Lyle Blackburn, Lyle Blackburn.com. And that's got links to all the pertinent things there. Of course, Rue Morgue is RUE-morgue, MORGUE.com. Check out that, order Monstro Bizarro. And then if you want to check out the movie, go to smalltownmonsters.com. It's available in DVD on the site, and it's also available to stream through Amazon Video and Vimeo. Yep. It's all out there right now, so definitely go check this stuff out. I've got so much stuff that's come out right now. It's just I hate promoting and asking people to buy so much stuff at one time, but let me tell you, this is quality stuff and good stuff, and I think everybody would be pleased, whether it's the written word or the visual film.
Yeah, and the film, let me tell you, I went to Amazon, streamed it. If you stream it in SD, it's $1.99. I got the HD, it's $2.99. I mean, geez.
Can't beat it.
Exactly. So, you know what? And that was less than what I paid to see the Greg Brady Bigfoot movie a few years ago. So, well worth every penny. So
you feel better now with your inner self.
I do, absolutely. So thank you so much for coming back on the show today.
Yeah, it was great to have you.
Always enjoy it, guys.
All right, man. So get out there and start finding more cryptids for us, so I can bastardize them in novels.
Will do. I'd be honored.
Okay, and for everybody else, happy hunting, and we'll see you next time on
Monster Man.